A $13 billion aircraft carrier was on fire from the inside, not hit by a missile, not attacked. A fire started in a laundry room and burned for 30 hours. 200 sailors choking on smoke, 600 sleeping on steel floors. Any normal warship, it goes home immediately. But this one didn't. 5 weeks later, it sailed back into the Red Sea, launching combat missions like nothing happened. So what actually happened inside that ship? And how do you fix a nuclear-powered supercarrier without a shipyard? This is Conflict Zone. The fire wasn't the real threat. Time was. Every day that USS Gerald R stayed offline, the Red Sea lost American air cover. The only nearby carrier, USS Abraham Lincoln, was too far away to help, and the replacement, USS George W.H. Bush, still weeks away, taking the long route around Africa. No backup, no coverage, no time. To understand the recovery, you need to understand the fire. This wasn't a normal fire, because this isn't a normal building. The Ford is a 100,000-ton steel labyrinth built from HY80 high-yield steel. And here's the problem. Steel doesn't burn, it spreads heat. When temperatures hit over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, the walls themselves started transferring heat into other compartments. Rooms with no flames started igniting. Paint caught fire. Cables melted. New fire started without a single spark crossing a wall. The steel didn't burn, it became the fire. To stop that, sailors had to fight heat, not just flames. They created fire boundaries, standing in nearby rooms spraying seawater directly onto steel walls just to keep them from igniting. And there's something most people don't realize. On a Navy ship, everyone is a firefighter. Cooks, engineers, mechanics. Within minutes, hundreds rushed in. What followed was a 30-hour war. No windows, no ventilation. Smoke filled everything. Teams moved in complete darkness using thermal imagers just to see. Temperatures climbed. Water turned to steam. Even inside protective gear, they were being cooked. Each air tank, 30 to 45 minutes. So they rotated. Go in, fight, get out, repeat. For 30 hours straight. Dragging hoses through tight ladders, standing in knee-deep water mixed with chemicals and live electrical danger. One mistake, and the fire could have reached aviation fuel. They stopped it, but the cost was brutal. Entire living spaces destroyed. Over 600 sailors had nowhere to sleep. The ship survived, but it wasn't whole. And now comes the critical decision. Normally, this ship goes to dry dock. Months of inspection, zero risk. But there was no time, so the Navy made a trade. Certainty for speed. Fix it forward, or lose control of the region. Days later, the Ford docked in Souda Bay, Greece, and instead of sending it home, they brought the shipyard to it. The Forward Deployed Regional Maintenance Center, FDRMC. Not a place, a network. Engineers, specialists, equipment, deployable anywhere. The moment the fire was out, Tiger teams were activated. They flew in with one mission: figure out if the ship was still safe to fight. Extreme heat changes steel. It can weaken it from the inside. So engineers scanned everything, using ultrasonic tools to detect hidden fractures. Then they checked the electrical grid. Because if power systems are damaged, you can't safely run a nuclear carrier. Within days, a Greek port became a working shipyard. But the ship wasn't the problem. The crew had lost everything. So the Navy did something extreme. It took nearly 1,000 mattresses from an unfinished carrier in the U.S., USS John F. Kennedy, stripped them out, flew them across the world, along with clothing, gear, supplies. That's not normal logistics. That's pressure. After additional work in Croatia, roughly 10 days of actual repairs, spread across just over 12 weeks. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. 5 weeks after a 30-hour fire, the Ford was back. Reactors online, launch systems ready, aircraft in the air. This wasn't just recovery, it was a message. Even damaged, this ship can still fight. But here's what most people missed. The fire wasn't the real problem. It was a symptom. Because the Ford didn't just fight a fire, it was fighting time for nearly 290 days. That's one of the longest deployments in modern history, and carriers aren't built for that. They're built for cycles: deploy, return, repair, reset, not endless operation. Take EMALS, the launch system. Every launch puts massive stress on electrical systems. Do that dozens of times a day for months without reset. Things start to break. Same with landing systems. Every landing slams energy into cables and machinery. Over time, heat builds, parts wear, systems degrade. So what did they do? They started using spare parts from backup systems. They were consuming their own safety margin. And it didn't stop there. Carriers depend on resupply ships, fuel, weapons, parts. That means ships sailing side by side, transferring supplies at sea. Extend that system too long, and it breaks too. Hydraulics fail, winches burn out, even supply ships start collapsing. So yes, the Ford was fighting in the Red Sea, but the Navy was fighting physics. And that leads to the real question: why did a fire start in the first place? The Navy runs on a system called OFRP, 1/3 deployed, 1/3 in maintenance, 1/3 training. Balanced, predictable. But that balance broke. There was no replacement ready, so the Ford stayed out far longer than it should have. And when that happens, failures aren't random, they're inevitable. The crew fought for 30 hours to save their ship, and they won. But here's the uncomfortable truth: they should never have had to. The fire wasn't just an accident, it was the bill for pushing the system too far. The Ford came back. That's impressive, but it raises a harder question. How many times can you do this before it stops working? Because this isn't just about one ship, it's about a system under strain. And if this is what resilience looks like, it might also be what breaking looks like right before it happens. This is Conflict Zone.